Hello, my name is Melissa Acord, and today I want to discuss with you President Truman and his use of the atomic bomb. In the year of 1945, even though it was evident that Japan was going to lose World War II, they still would not surrender their arms and chose to fight until the end of the war was officially established. Harry Truman, who was president and also who was commander-in-chief during that time, chose to make what is now known as one of the most controversial decisions of the 20th century. On the morning of August 6, 1945, President Truman, along with his lieutenants, decided to drop the world's first atomic bomb over a city in Japan. While this action brought an end to such a bloody war, it did in fact start a new era of warfare, which was frightening to all people at that time and still is frightening to people today. I am certain that President Truman was under such an extreme amount of stress and that he contemplated on other options regarding how to boldly stand against the Japanese and their armies to get them to officially surrender their arms and end this horrible war. I think as commander or an official in charge, any decision or any efforts that he would have made at that time, that there would have been opposing arguments from both sides. The disagreement on whether the choice that President Truman made was the right one or the wrong one still carries on in today's time. I personally can't even begin to imagine, as the person in charge of the United States, all the stress, the fear, and also the desire that I would have to save a country that was under such turmoil and extreme warfare at that present time. The feeling and also the need to make such a huge decision being solely my responsibility would be such a huge burden to carry, and I know that he did. As we all know, many things were done previously to try to get Japan to surrender their arms, but they just did not work. So many militants and civilians were killed during air raids and firebombing attacks, but the Japanese just still would not give up. In my opinion, as other wars that had happened previously and other conflicts with other countries that went on, President Truman's choice was one that he could make to be certain to cause severe destruction, get the Japanese to surrender, and one that would happen in an instant. But possibly the full effects of the nuclear detonation were not thought of, or possibly was placed in the back of his mind as he focused on his problem and situation at hand. Experimentation, as we all know, is trial and error, and to get something right could take years or even decades to finally accomplish or get the outcome that we want or that we need. I am sure during this time of history, the experimentation with nuclear weapons were still being performed, but the continued war would have caused so many more deaths of militants and also civilians, and also would continue the economic strain than there already was during this time of history. I think Japan finally woke up to what the United States was demanding of them and knew that if they did not surrender, which they indeed did, that so much more harm was going to come upon them. I am also certain that so many more soldiers, Marines, and civilians would have died, whether by weapons or by the economy failing, and that so many people survived this war because of the decision that President Truman made. I would have hated to be in President Truman's shoes or in his place, as he had to make such a quick decision to fight for the United States. But if I was in his shoes, I think I would have made the same decision as President Truman did. My country, the people in it, and also myself would have been the first and most important priority in my mind, just as I am certain that it was on President Truman's on that awful but successful day that the United States had to face. Thank you to my audience for taking the time to listen to my opinion on the bombing of 1945.